Welcome to another session. In this session, we'll be dealing with the topic correlation method, correlation research method. But before going to it, as I said, the first unit, Introduction to Psychology, how much it is important, it is also important to know research. This unit 2 is also equally important to the unit 1 because first unit gives you an understanding of what is psychology. Second unit gives you the understanding of how psychologists work. So, in order to understand the next chapters, you have to have a basic understanding of how psychologists study behavior. So, I'm stressing much on this unit because this gives you a better understanding of how things happen. So this is just a small topic, correlation research. So I just want to review from the first of this unit, give a important points and proceed further. Okay, so let's see the recaption. So far in the unit 2, we have seen the introduction to methods of psychological inquiry. So what we will be studying? We'll be studying how psychologists study behavior, what methods are used to study behavior and mental processes, what methods, how. The main steps involved in describe, predict, explain, control. Describe the behavior, predict the behavior, explain the behavior, and control the behavior. So what are the types of observation? That are formal observations, systematic observations. So what type of method? There is a methodology adopted, systematic methods or formal methods. What are they? So before going to understand these methods, like this is the introduction of the chapter, what we will be studying. So what are the goals of psychological inquiry or a psychological method? That is what we have discussed here. These are the goals. In addition to it, we have the application also. So after taking all these steps, description, prediction, explanation, control of behavior and application of knowledge is really important. After knowing all these things, application of knowledge is important. Okay. Did I miss this one? Yeah, no. So next to it is steps in conducting scientific research. So steps in conducting scientific research will be like, what is a scientific method? So psychology as a science, that is like the method which the modern periods approve what you have learned is scientific method. Most of the Indian psychology is still has to be proved, but the Western methods or psychology is based on scientific methods only. What is a scientific method? Study a particular event or phenomenon in an objective, systematic, and testable manner. What is a scientific method? Study of a particular event in an objective, systematic, and testable manner. What is a systematic procedure or the steps of investigation? Or there are 4 types, that is conceptualizing the problem, collecting of data, drawing conclusions, revising research solutions. These are similar to methods Okay, but our goals, but here it is steps. The goals are also similar. If you can see, describe, recollect, methods in that one. So steps, you can see these four steps: conceptualizing a problem, collection of data, drawing conclusions, and revising research conclusions. Okay, next, alternative paradigms of research. One is scientific method, next is alternative paradigm. Alternative, in that alternative paradigm, the method used is interpretive method. Interpretive method, what is human? It is like naturalistic observation. In the earlier we have seen these things. Now there is another method, scientific and interpretive. Psychology as a natural science, the overt behavior is observed, particularly overt behavior in natural observation. If you can see the textbook, you can revise every point. Okay, next. Next topic is nature of psychological data. What is the characteristics of data? Here we introduced the term data. We will be reusing it multiple times. Data form an important input in psychological inquiry. Like it is the important part of psychological inquiry. Data plays a key role. Data approximate means it equals reality to some extent. Like what is happening, it will give you the nearest representation. Like our ideas verify, like either it is correct or wrong. It is decided by data. What you are assuming, what you are trying to study, what you are doing a research. Our ideas, hunches, notions, whatever it can be hypothesis. You will be forming a hypothesis, you will be studying it, and you will be trying to prove whether verify it, and then you will decide whether it is correct or wrong. Data are not dependent entities. So data is it dependent on the researcher, like, or the subject. Okay, it is not independent entity. It has to be controlled by the person. Okay, next. So data is located in a context. Data has to be in a context, and it is tied to, it is related to method and theory. And it is not like all the conditions. What are the data has to be? It has to be physical, social context. Like you can relate it to the, like a time behavior. Like these can be related to types of data. So types of data, physical data. What is it? Demographical. Social context, and other related one, physiological data. What is behavior? Behavior related to psychological information. Physical information, that is subjective. Persons involved. So data are not dependent. What are the types of data? So demographic information, physical information, physiological information or data, psychological data. These are all the. So I'm just recalling these things because everything is interrelated. Everything is interrelated, but somewhat confusing. So a revision can give you good knowledge of what are the points, what are the different types of words we are used in different contexts. Different contexts. Okay. So next, the data is not dependent. Where it is dependent, it is physically a social context. So these are related to demographic and physical information. Persons involved related to physical information. Time and behavior related to physiological and psychological information. These are the points really important to recollect. that will give you a linkage to memorize this information, and during the exam you can recall the information very easily. Important methods in psychology. So this is the main theme of the unit. So what are the important methods? Like observational method, experimental method, correlation, survey. So far we have seen observation and experimental. Now we will see correlational research, psychological testing. So we have come forward for this, and next, last one is case study. Last one is case study. So what is observation method? In that observation, he discussed about, earlier we have discussed scientific method and interpretive method, interpretation method, and now we will also see the quality. So what is done in scientific observation? In scientific observation, we will be selection, recording, and analyze, selecting the data which has to be studied, which is to be studied. Recording of the data, analyzing of data will be done in scientific observation. What are the types of observation? Naturalistic and control. Naturalistic is done like in a stadium. It is like, it is not laboratory. It is not a setting. It is that will be completely very natural and close to the regular behavior of the human beings. But what is controlled observation? You will have control. It is instruction based, or a room which is confined like a laboratory. Okay, next, how these things will be done? Either in participant method or non-participant method. In the naturalistic also, you can observe in participant method or non-participant method. In the controlled observation also, you can do it in participant way or non-participant way. So okay, so these are the types of observations. So observation method will be easy. You can just go through the textbook and understand this. Next to it is experimental method. This is second one. This is first one. This is second one. In this second one, we have another introduced some other concept, that is variable. A variable is really important in an experiment, particularly in research methods. What is a variable? Variable varies. Variable varies according to the context, conditions, factors, like on types of data. So variable is that. So how many types of variables? So independent variable, dependent variable, extraneous variables, or majorly we will be seeing dependent and independent variable. And the most important thing is independent variable. This is the, of course, they are interdependent on each other, but independent variable is really important. Dependent variable is dependent on independent variable. What happens? Dependent variable is dependent on independent variable. When independent variable changes, the dependent variable automatically changes. So this is how we study, like cause and effect. In experimental method, we see cause and effect relationship. What is the cause? Independent variable. What is the effect? Dependent variable. So there will be some variables which are uncontrollable or controllable, or these explainable variables also affect the dependent variable. So what are the types of external variables? There is organismic variables, that is related to organism or human beings, situational variables, environmental variables, sequential variables. Like this will have some sequence. Environmental variables like time, temperature, humidity. Situational is like context based. All these things. Okay. So how these experimental method will be carried out? Either experimental or control group. Experimental group and control group. Control group is completely under laboratory conditions. Experimental will be like there will be instructional method. The participants will be under similar conditions, few conditions which they be instructed, and then they will be observed. And after deciding experimental or control group, you may also can proceed with field experiments where the experiments cannot be experimental things cannot be carried out. Then you can go with the field experiment. And even though in the field experiment when the conditions are not applicable, you can go for quasi experiment. Quasi is the word what if so, what happens, that these things will happen. So is there anything? Yes. So next to it, experimental method. So that's the end of the document. We will proceed with the correlation research. So far we discussed this. We tried to recall the, you can say, the methods of inquiry. What are the basic information involved? Next to it, we see there is an activity. So in this activity, we will try to identify the variables. So far, we understood independent and dependent variables. So what are the variables here? Teachers, it is apostrophe. Teachers' classroom behavior affects student performance. So this is the independent variable, this is the dependent variable. Because if the teacher's behavior changes, the student performance changes. If the teacher teaches in an excellent manner, the student performance is also excellent. If teachers are not teaching properly, the student performance, if teachers behavior improves, student performance improves. If teachers behavior is not good, the student performance is also bad. So in that way, try to complete this activity. Healthy parent-child relationship. Parent-child relationship. If you change this one, if you try to modify these parent-child relationship, the emotional adjustment of children changes, or vice versa. Okay, try to identify that. Increase in the level of peer pressure. So if you increase the level of, if you change peer pressure, the level of anxiety differs. So what is dependent variable and what is independent variable? Enriching the environment of young children, enriching with what? Special books and puzzles, enhances their performance. Enhances their performance. What is the change? Performance will be changed. By what? Special books and puzzles. So try to observe independent variable and dependent variable and complete this activity. Okay, just try to recall this, revisit the independent variable and dependent variable, try to understand and complete this activity before this thing. Next, even we have to clear the review questions before proceeding further, because there are 13 questions, I think so. So far we have come up to the mid of the month. So please complete these questions as early as possible. And these are also very simple. If you can just refer the textbook, NCERT textbook, and complete these ones. Goals, even just now I recalled all these goals of the scientific inquiry, like collecting, analyzing, and application of knowledge, revision. All these methods can come under goals. And what are the various steps? Steps also are also similar to the goals. Even there are 5 steps involved in scientific inquiry. Just go and complete this question. Explain the nature of psychology data. Even I have recalled these points, like data is not dependent, data is related to the particular subjects, how the data has to be done, what are the types of data. All these questions, all these things are just recalled in the earlier minutes of this session. How do experimental or control group differ? Try to work with experimental. There is a try to, with the help of an example, try to get this question done. Okay, experimental group and control group. Even there is a smoke experiment, there will be a stadium experiment. You can take classroom behavior. By these things, you can complete this question. A researcher is studying the relationship between speed of cycling. Like speed of cycling is like you are bicycling, like you are riding a cycle, riding a riding a cycle, and the presence of people. Formulate a relevant hypothesis and identify the dependent, and like this gives you a understanding of formulating, creating a problem, conceptualizing the problem, collecting data, next analyzing data, revisiting the decision. All these steps should be based on this question. You should frame a situation and write the steps. Okay, discuss the strengths and weakness of experimental method and method of inquiry. Method of inquiry, weakness of strengths and weakness of experimental method as a method of inquiry. It is as a method of inquiry. Like experimental method, try to give strengths and weakness. Okay. I think observational method they have given, but now they asked experimental method. The pros and cons of experimental method as a method of inquiry. Okay, next. Dr. Krishnan is going to observe and record children's play behavior at nursery school without attempting to influence or control the behavior. Influence or control the behavior without attempting. I can just recall a method like going to observe, record. Which method of research is involved? Just try to process and discuss its merits and demerits. Now, as I said, it is related to experimental. The other thing is like observation method. Try to understand these things and complete these 7 questions in 2 or 3 days as early as possible. Okay, and let us proceed further. So next is correlation research, the topic of the day. In psychological research, we often wish to determine the relationship between two variables for prediction purposes. Like as in the earlier session, we discussed cause and effect. Now we are trying to determine the relationship. Even though cause and effect is also relationship, here the relationship is correlation research. That like what if it is like predicting what is what. Okay, for example, you may be interested in knowing whether the amount of study time is related to the student's academic achievement. I think I have earlier we discussed some example in activity 2.2. Activity 2.2, this is related to such example. This is like correlating one variable with other, one independent variable and dependent variable. Okay, so there can also be examples like two dependent variables and one independent variables. Can it be possible? Just think in that way. Okay, this question is different from the one which experimental method seeks to answer, in the sense that here you do not manipulate the amount of study time and examine its impact on an achievement. Okay, what he is saying, it is like there are two variables and you will be observing them. That study time, you are not manipulating the time, and academic achievement. Here he is also giving the You are not manipulating them, but just you simply find out the relationship between two variables to determine whether they are associated or covariant or not. Associated or not. You are just simply studying it in a natural way. Okay, the strength and direction of relationship between two variables is represented by a number known as correlation coefficient. The strength and direction of relationship between two variables, it is called correlation coefficient. Its values can range from +1 to -1. There is also mid value of 0.0 minus 1.0. These are the three things which are important for you. Okay, next. On the other hand, negative correlation. Sorry, I think I missed a word here. I just to take the help of the material. This is unit 2, right? Yeah. I think the positive correlation. Did I miss that word? Yes. I missed this one. So let us proceed with the material. Here, as you can see, the coefficient correlation is three types, that is positive, negative and zero. What is the positive one? Here you can see the value 1.0 is positive, 0 is 0, -1 is negative correlation. If the values falls between, like similarly, the value of other variable y also increase. When the x increases, the value of y also increase. Like if the study time is increased of student behavior, the student academic increases. This is like positive correlation. A decrease in y 2 takes place. Like when plus and plus is also plus, when minus and minus is also plus. It is like mathematical operators. Like here, when there is decline, there is also decline in other variable. If the amount of study is decreased, the academic achievement also decreases. This is also positive correlation. What is the value? Also, the less they studied, the lower was the achievement. The higher they study, the more the achievement is. And this type of association will be indicated by a positive number. And the stronger the association between studying and achievement, the closer the number would be to the +1.0. The amount of time increases, the value also increases, indicating a strong positive association. Like these variables, the relationship between these variables also understands. On the other hand, a negative correlation tells us that as the value of one variable increases, the other, like we can go to the old method. Like on the other hand, a negative correlation tells us that as the value of one variable decreases, the other also decreases. Maybe you may hypothesize that as the hours of study time increase, the number of spent in other activities will decrease. Here, it is not the academic achievement, it is like other activity. Say, you can say eating breakfast, like playing. When you study more, your playtime is less. You can correlate in that way. That way, if the study increases, what happened? The physical activity decreases. That will be giving a negative correlation. When physical activity increases, so minus and plus, plus and minus. Previously, we discussed plus and plus, minus and minus. Now it is minus plus and plus minus. Okay, we can understand in the mathematical operators level. So here the value is between 0 to 1. Now it is -1 to 0. So higher the negative value, the lesser is the higher is the significant relationship, that is negative correlation. And when there is close to 0, there is no relationship between the values. When the values are really small, when it is -9, -8, that is strong relationship. But -1, -2 and 0, it is very negligible and no correlation. No correlation. So far, we discussed these three concepts, that is positive correlation, negative correlation, and no relation. These are the three things. But what happened? These two variables are equal. This is not like one is affecting the other. You are just studying one variable in comparison to the other variable. These are not like experimental one. The correlation method tries to understand two factors and study the effect of one on the other. Okay. So correlation research is so simple and it is really important. The method we use is software SPSS, and there are like this is a software we use to correlate things and analyze data. Of course, analyze data. Even though for establishing the relationship between variables, independent variable and dependent variable, after analyzing data with SPSS, statistical package for social sciences, statistical package for social sciences. This is the meaning of SPSS. We use this one to study the relationship. The stronger the relation, the successful of the hypothesis. So if the relationship is less, the possibility of hypothesis failing is also increases. Okay, but that revision of data, revisiting or revision of knowledge has to be done after concluding the this example. So far we discussed everything in this unit, and I think I have completed the session for today. Thank you so much for your time. Any queries, please write to the mail ID and Daphne Civils Academy at gmail.com, and also my mail ID party.sairam at gmail.com, or you can reach us on the phone for discussion. This is really important chapter, that is why I'm stressing on it very much. So correlation method is very simple method. You can just compare this one when other things are also important. There can be several steps involved in correlation research. Even though this is simple, the relationship between variables is really important. That's why I recalled everything. So thank you so much for participation. Have a great day.